Doing a little piece about Bitcoin and my thoughts on it since a lot of people have been chatting about it. We've had the Bitcoin halving. We've got a lot of SECs over and done with. We've got a lot of new ETFs. Bitcoin obviously has been on fire for the last few months. We've got a lot of things that have just been recreating a lot of the Bitcoin vibe again. So I wanted to chat a little bit about that, give my thoughts on it. And guys, just remember, if you're looking to find more information about me, you can come over to simplertrading.com/Moxie. And we're always running a 30-day trial, so come on in, say hi. Let me know if you guys are new in the room, and we'll see you in there. So let's get to it. Looking up Bitcoin itself here, but this is really what I wanted to be talking about today. I figured we have a couple items that we can pull together here. So with Bitcoin, halving, right? Everyone's been talking about that over the last few months. It has now happened. So it's in the rearview mirror. So what happened? So if you guys don't know much about this, then maybe go read up on it a little bit first. But basically, the halving means that for every blockchain that is solved, the equations that all these computers and hashers and all that stuff that are doing, they get rewards for doing all that effort in order to solve the codes in order to keep the blockchain moving forward. Well, it now got cut in half, which is the fourth halving. It went from about 6 to now 3. And they say it's about 3 coins that are rewarded every 10 minutes or so. As far as Bitcoin itself, historically, the halving has actually created a market rise in Bitcoin because, well, there's scarcity, and that's why Bitcoin. That's how Bitcoin was designed and developed in the first place. Is that you can't keep printing Bitcoin. There is only going to be so much of them. I think it's 21 million actually, and once that's done, it's done, and they're going to all be mined. And then they've been figuring out they have to keep this thing going for however many years, and so every 4 years roughly, I think it was every 210,000 blocks that are solved is when you do another halving. It's about every 4 years, and so that then helps with the scarcity portion of it and keeps Bitcoin's value up. So as far as Bitcoin itself, you would think that it's going to keep moving up. We'll have to see how that is. I'm wondering a little bit if this time might be different because, as you see here in my notes, having buy the rumor. So buy the rumor, sell the news. This is one of those old adages that we have in the stock market that, if let's just say Tesla's going to have really good earnings, or they have a new car coming out or something like that. The people on the inside who know this, they've already started buying Tesla in anticipation of that report, of that news, of something good. And so that stock price will have gone up. And then by the time the news comes out to the general population is like, oh my God, this is great news, let's go buy it. While the insiders and the people who know this stuff have already bought it months or weeks ago, and now they're selling and they're unloading onto the unsuspecting public. So that is kind of the idea of buy the rumor, sell the news. Basically, it's like, oh, yeah, good. We got the good news that we were already anticipating. It's already been priced in, already been factored in. And now that Bitcoin halving and Bitcoin in general is just so popular and so many people know about it, we knew that Bitcoin halving was coming up and the scarcity was coming up. And so that the idea that maybe people already bought ahead of that to get ahead of the scarcity and the decline in how much is going to be coming out, that might have already happened. So that's one thing to think about. Buy the rumor, sell the news for Bitcoin. The other side of it is that even if that wasn't the case, the fact that Bitcoin has just run up so much anyway kind of makes it that even though now maybe that Bitcoin is now more scarce because only 3 of them are coming out every 10 minutes, it might have already just had too much of a move that nobody is willing to really buy it right now to keep driving the price up. Yes, people are buying it, but I mean, enough to actually get price to really go higher because this thing has really, really moved. I mean, we're talking, it was down at 16,000 and, we're peaked out at about 75,000. That's a hell of a move, really, when you think about it. The other thing, if we kind of jump around a little bit, let's kind of come down here, just SEC and the ETFs. One thing to say as far as the ETFs is that since this has gotten approval from the SEC, basically some of the other cryptos, were fighting the SEC and they won. And so now Bitcoin has gotten pretty good acceptance, and now they have a bunch of ETFs. Well, now this is really in public domain, and a lot of the institutions had to actually buy Bitcoin in order to have the Bitcoin ETF function and have it on their books and everything else like that. So all of this buying and the run up that we've seen over the last few months could actually be more of an effect of that than this Bitcoin halving. So there could be all these other reasons as to why Bitcoin is already up. Um, so yeah, I think that's part of it. And then if we come back to the miners, oop, like let's see, how does this affect the miners? Well, some people have been speculating that since the miners are paid for their efforts via Bitcoins and the value of Bitcoin, well, now that you've cut that in half, they're getting a smaller reward. So does this still work out for them? Well, there are a range of Bitcoin miners. Some of them are more efficient than others. Some of them, their electricity costs are higher versus than others. Their overhead is higher than others. They have debt as opposed to, good operating numbers. There are just, as like any company, there are some companies that are doing it better than others and more efficient than others and are further ahead. And so I think that is where we can kind of see the difference in the playing field as far as the miners go. If we just kind of look, and let me bring up, say, let's do the monthly and weekly. Let's look at HUT. HUT is not doing very well. Okay, you can see here it's been languishing along the lows for quite some time. Yeah, it's had some spikes, but for the most part, it is not doing well. So if you looked at this and just said, hey, if this was a company and the stock market is a representation of how that company is doing, we're looking at HUT and it's like, yeah, probably not doing very well. Now you go on the other side and you look at CLSK, doing much better, isn't it? Yeah. So it's been following the price of Bitcoin, but it's also just holding value. It's actually doing pretty well up in this area. And my understanding is CLSK is one of the better miners. You could look at Mara. This is another one that has talked about. Now, it's not as good as CLSK, but it's not as bad as HUT. And so it is doing better, and it's one of the upper ones. Same thing with Riot. Riot's doing okay. It's kind of middle of the pack. Actually down today. I think it just had earnings 2 days ago. So maybe that one's not doing so well. And then there's Cypher. Maybe actually doing okay. It's kind of in an uptrend. It hasn't been able to break out, but it's not looking terrible. And so it's still kind of in that range, lots of volume. And so this might be one of those middle companies, but really we are noticing that right now, just the miners are really not moving much. And I think they're trying to figure out what to do next. So if they get paid for their efforts via Bitcoin rewards and that just got cut in half, well, then they're going to have to pivot and find other ways of making money and covering their costs and their overheads and actually being profitable. So we should be expecting that probably a bit more Bitcoin miners are going to get into transaction fees and they have to diversify and figure out other ways to get revenue. And then I think if you look at Irene, this is another one. Again, not terrible. It is definitely off of its lows. It could be flagging sideways, and there has been lots of volume. So we're just going to have to see if these sideways patterns actually resolve to the upside or not. And then Hive was another one that I used to like in the day, but man, this thing has just really lost its glory. And you can see same thing. It's just been rolling over and it's on its lows. So if you're going to be trading the Bitcoin miners, you definitely need to pick the winner and the better ones as opposed to going after some of these others because they just keep losing value. Maybe they will consolidate. Maybe there will be some buyouts and mergers as some of the more successful companies buy out the less successful ones, take them over, make them more efficient, buy out their debt, stuff like that. So there could be some shakeup in this whole area now that we have had the halving, and they need to reprice themselves. All right, then if we look at this, different than the regular market. And what I mean by that is the stock market. And it's a question mark. I actually kind of look at this, and if we look at Bitcoin, this really has moved a lot in lockstep with the general market. We had the boom of 2020, the whole market went up, the risky assets went up. Okay. We had the bear market 21, 22. Yeah, Bitcoin came down too. And then we've now actually had some of the small caps in the market in general also move up, and Bitcoin has moved up again on the heels of the halving and the SEC approval and the ETFs. We got all that kind of stuff. And so I'm kind of looking at this and saying, I I'm not sure that this is kind of its own thing. It seems right now, because of its greater acceptance and because of probably ETFs, it really is starting to kind of trade more like the general market. We got a lot of trading algorithms in there. We've got a lot of hedge funds in there. We got a lot of people who are trading this as kind of just a normal vehicle, and they are kind of just now making this like another risky vehicle. So just kind of keep that in mind if you're going to be looking at this. And I really would try and time it and tune it with the greater market and probably interest rates, because that's another thing. It is considered like a small cap, or the miners are considered small caps. and they are going to be interest rate sensitive. So we've got some other ingredients kind of sprinkled in the pie for Bitcoin miners. We can even look at I think it's Ethereum, and Ethereum's kind of doing the same thing. So you can look at the other cryptos and see how they're doing. They're probably going to be all trading in somewhat of a similar pack to each other. And same thing, these things have had a really, really good run for the last few months, and they really just kind of got extended. For what I look at, that's extended. And same thing here, that's extended. And so this is going to be a normal type pullback that I would be expecting even with Bitcoins. For example, if you just look at the S&P, the S&P had a really good run over the last few months, got really extended. Look at that. Very, very similar to what we saw in Bitcoin. Kind of hitting these upper areas, and look at it pulling back. Even the S&P is pulling back. And so that's why when you look at Bitcoin, it's pulling back just like the S&P. The timing of it is pretty uncanny. So yeah, I don't think that there's too much to say about Bitcoin halving right now. For Bitcoin itself, I think it's probably more impactful to the miners. And the SEC has approved it. We got the ETFs. This is going to be a thing. It's going to be sticking around. I think cryptocurrency is definitely here, and now we'll have to see where Bitcoin actually goes. I would love to continue buying Bitcoin and the miners, but right now we're just going to have to wait for them to get themselves shaken out, because right now it's still pulling back. Not quite the right opportunity. I think some dust needs to settle. I would like to be bullish, but you got to pick the right horse in order to have that work out for you guys. So hope that you found that valuable. Thanks again. And if you guys have any questions, come over to simplertrading.com. See you guys later.